Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Black Adam, which takes place in the DCEU, and it's been a minute since we've been in this world. You know, we're finally back in the world that has started all the way back with Man of Steel, and it's kind of nice to be back here, although this movie does fall into the sort of detriments of past DCEU movies, but also following some of the strengths of the DCEU movies in the past. This movie is definitely a mixed bag for me. I understand why the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes is so low, but I do think this is going to be a very crowd-pleasing movie for audiences, and a movie that I did enjoy for the most part. And so we are going to be talking about spoilers for this movie. So if you have not seen Black Adam, go check it out. It's in theaters this weekend, and it is a lot of popcorn fun. So let's just jump right into this thing. Starting with the greatest things about this movie, which I will say is the style and the cast of this movie. This movie is directed by Jaume Collet-Serra, who's done movies like Orphan, Nonstop, and more recently Jungle Cruise. And I think if you look through his filmography, he has mostly movies that's maybe didn't do too well critic score. I don't think he really has anything that's like greatly certified fresh. It's all, you know, either high towards the rotten scale or kind of lower towards the fresh scale. It's in that range of like 50 to like 75%, never really going above or too far below that, because he makes general crowd pleasing movies. The audiences usually really dig his movies, and I think that this movie is no different. I think they got him for that reason, to just make a really fun, bombastic movie that has a lot of high energy, a lot of great action sequences. And in terms of those aspects of this movie, I think it really works. I did like the look of this movie, the color, the style of it. I did like all the action sequences of this movie, especially when it comes to Black Adam's character, you know, just absolutely murdering a bunch of people unapologetically, and also the Justice Society of America. I really liked all those characters and their power sets and how these powers were weaved in and out of this movie against different characters in this movie, and I think it was very entertaining to watch all these different things happening on the big screen. I did like Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam, and I know he's been trying to play this character for like the past 15 years, and his movie is finally now out, and it looks like he's just having a lot of fun, just like I said, unapologetically murdering everybody in his path. It's actually kind of entertaining to watch him throughout this entire movie, just murdering people without any remorse whatsoever in front of the Justice Society, especially Hawkman. He just does not care. One of my favorite parts of this movie was when, you know, they finally seem like they're on the same page, and The Rock grabs these two goons, flies up in the air, and Hawkman has to chase after him, and he's like interrogating them. As soon as he gets the information, he just drops both of them, and you know, Hawkman has to save them, and he says, "Oh, I knew you were going to save them, so that's why I dropped them." And it's such a good way to pit these characters against each other, and I really like that conflict that they had throughout this entire movie, because I do think the Black Adam and the Justice Society conflict throughout this movie is the best in the film. The standouts in terms of the other cast members is definitely Aldis Hodge as Hawkman, and of course we have Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. And Dr. Fate honestly stole the entire movie for me. He was by far my favorite aspect of this movie. I just loved his power sets, just the look of his powers, the style of his powers, his performance in this movie, his way of seeing to the future and trying to avoid these different things that are about to happen, especially when it comes to Hawkman's death that he's, you know, being projected to in this movie. And so he decides to kind of sacrifice himself towards the end of this movie in order to save his friends. And I do think that relationship between Hawkman and Dr. Fate, and that, you know, kind of dynamic between Dr. Fate and Black Adam and everybody else in this movie, was really strong. And of course, Pierce Brosnan is a national treasure. He is so good in this movie. And although they didn't get a lot of screen time, I did enjoy seeing Cyclone and Atom Smasher in this movie. They had a couple of cute moments, and I did enjoy their power sets, although Cyclone just mostly was slow motion shots of her kind of flinging things at the camera, and so she didn't really have too much to do. And same thing with Atom Smasher. He was kind of just a bumbling idiot, but when they did have the ability to kind of show off their abilities, it was kind of cool. I do wish the JSA were already kind of formed as a team in universe, not necessarily us getting a movie that took place before this, because I don't think a JSA movie would have done well with this sort of star power. I do think that it helps with them being introduced in a Black Adam movie, with, you know, The Rock being the star power, the driving force of this movie that is directly connected to things like Shazam that have already happened in universe. But, you know, introducing these characters, if they had already been a team for a little while and they had already gone on some missions, we wouldn't have to deal with the baggage of like Cyclone and Atom Smasher trying to learn how to work together in a superhero team with characters like Hawkman and Dr. Fate. And so we're kind of getting two movies in one. We're kind of getting this introduction to this team, although you could have just had them already, you know, knowing who each other were, and then maybe we still have some conflict between these characters, just how they are in this movie, but we won't have to deal with the baggage of introducing these storylines from the very, very beginning. But for the most part, I did enjoy the JSA's involvement in this movie, and their storylines and their direct conflict with The Rock and Black Adam, and their mission of it kind of like, we need to go to this place because there's this outsider, we know the storyline, we know what happened in the past, the truth with what happened with Black Adam all those 5,000 years ago, but, you know, the people of this city, they don't know the truth. truth. They only know the legend. They only know the fairy tale, essentially, of how he became, kind of the champion of this world. And I do like that twist where The Rock's character is not the kid that was chosen as champion by the Wizards. He's actually the father of the kid, and that kid was killed, kind of sacrificing himself, giving the powers of Shazam to his father in order to save him, and then him dying right after. I was not expecting that at all, because I did like the dynamic between Dwayne Johnson and this kid in the movie. At first, I really was thinking that he was a kid in this, man's body, because the way he interacted with this kid in the movie was kind of like he's kind of learning how to be a superhero. This kid is, teaching him, like, you gotta say a catch line before these things, and it was kind of acting like this fish out of water thing, kind of in both ways, in terms of you're 5,000 years later into the future, but also he never really got a childhood necessarily, because his world was so tough. He was a slave, he had all these hardships with him, so I thought, okay, that makes sense. But when you find out that he was actually the father of this kid, then that relationship kind of turns on its head, and it's like, oh, he's a father, and he lost his son, and now he's, he's dealing with this other kid, and he has this sort of like rapport. It's like, I want to have some relationship with a kid that I never had a chance to because my son was killed. And so I do like how you can kind of retroactively look back at this movie with that twist in mind, and just kind of dealing with how he is perceived as this legend of what his son was, but not being that type of person, because he never was that. He was never supposed to have these powers. He was never supposed to be the chosen one by the Wizards, but he has these powers now. What is he going to do with these things? That is a great question to ask for his character. Where I think this movie really falters is, I think, the potential of this concept, because I think you have a great anti-hero in The Rock's character, with him, having all that weight on his shoulders of kind of living up to the legend that he is, and at the same time you have this JSA, these outsiders coming in to take him under arrest, and to kind of like, you have this idea of these oppressors in this city, and you have these outsiders, the JSA, who you think are heroes, who actually seem to be the villains of this city. And so you have those ideas present in this movie, but the movie is so, worried with, this other storyline with this other guy that's trying to get this crown, and this crown is going to turn him into the demon that's kind of the antithesis of Black Adam. These demons are going to give this guy the powers that is kind of the opposite of Black Adam's, Shazam abilities. And so I just really didn't care about the last act of this movie whatsoever. I think the movie came to a really solid conclusion when you have The Rock trying to save this kid because he was kidnapped by these mercenaries, and he causes this explosion, and he almost kills the kid. He almost kills him because of his uncontrollable powers, and that kind of makes him think, oh, I didn't deserve these abilities. I'm going to say Shazam, I'm going to turn myself in, and I'm going to be put in prison because I am a danger to everything. And maybe he does get set free by Dr. Fate in some other way, of at the very end of the movie, kind of like a Captain America Civil War type thing, where Cap comes to save all the people that were arrested in that movie. And so I don't care if the movie ends that way, because the conflict that was really interesting, the idea of that was kind of more so the idea of these oppressors coming in to try to take down Black Adam, even though he is the true savior for these people, and these people need this type of savior in their own little world, because all these outsiders coming in don't understand the actual conflicts that are happening in this area. And so I didn't need this mercenary guy to end up being this giant demon guy. I just needed them to be mercenaries, and to see Black Adam go through the character arc that he goes through, and even if he doesn't turn himself in, maybe he could still be set free because the people of this town need this type of hero. Maybe they can break him out, or maybe Dr. Fate can break him out, or whatever it is. It just feels like it came to a satisfying conclusion with his character arc, and then there was another tacked on 30 minutes that I just did not care about. This movie also does hit a lot of the pet peeves that I have in terms of filmmaking in general, because I am a filmmaker. I was going through my senior thesis film that I was editing earlier this year, and a lot of people were saying that I was just flying through the dialogue way too fast. I was just cutting from line to line to line, and I wasn't letting any of the moments of these characters breathe whatsoever. And that's what this movie does for the entire runtime. There's never a moment where a character makes a decision and you get to see in their face why they're deciding what they're doing, or why they're changing their mind so fast, because a character will say something completely game-changing. It completely changes everybody's motivations, and from an instant it goes from that character saying the line to cutting to somebody's reaction, them saying a line, and all of a sudden they're off to the next thing. It doesn't let any moments breathe in this film. And another pet peeve that I have is the music. There is constant musical score throughout all of the dialogue sequences, all the emotional sequences. There's literally not a moment of silence throughout this entire film, because it is just all noise. This movie is so non-stop, even in the basic dialogue sequences, that it feels like even the shots of them speaking doesn't last longer than a second. It seems like the dialogue sequences are edited like an action movie. They're scored like an action movie, not like a dialogue sequence. It never lets up. And so in terms of that, it feels like the character arcs are rushed. It feels like the story beats are rushed. It feels like the the things that the movie are trying to say with, you know, oppression are kind of being rushed. Everything feels rushed in this movie. It's so jam-packed with so much stuff. And if, like I said, if you cut out that last act that I just really didn't care about and just kind of dive into this JSA versus Black Adam storyline, let that sit a little bit and let these characters truly make decisions and why they are, you know, kind of changing their mind, why Black Adam decides to turn himself in, why, you know, these characters, you know, want to believe in Black Adam versus why the JSA feels like they're being the oppressors of the city. Why are these things happening? Why are these characters making the decisions that they're making? Just none of it feels necessarily earned, which is why I feel like this movie is very style over substance. There's really not much this movie is trying to say whatsoever. I will say a couple really cool parts. The after credit scene was really cool. Of course, we have Henry Cavill, which was spoiled by some, you know, film pundits, which is very annoying, but it was spoiled for me, but it's still cool to see Henry Cavill back in this movie in the post-credit scene. It's really cool. He just kind of shows up, he says a line, and that's really it. But we get Henry Cavill back. We're getting a Superman movie and possibly a Black Adam versus Superman movie soon into the future, so I'm very excited to see those things. And also, EMILIA HARCOURT is in this movie from Peacemaker and from the Suicide Squad, which was a very unexpected cameo. Honestly, I was more surprised about that one than I was with the Henry Cavill one. So this movie, like I said, it is a mixed bag. It's just a lot of style, a lot of action, a lot of big booms, and not much, you know, substance. There wasn't much to kind of leave away with this movie. This isn't a movie that I'm going to rewatch often because it's just kind of a popcorn noisy movie, and it's not something that I'm going to sit and watch and enjoy unless I'm trying to rewatch, you know, Shazam, or if I'm trying to rewatch, you know, the next Black Adam movie or the next Superman movie to kind of like build up to the next team up thing that they're doing. So this movie isn't great by any means, but it is definitely a very entertaining, audience approved, you know, popcorn movie. So what did you guys think of Black Adam if you guys saw it this week? And definitely comment down below, and also subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this review and want to see more just like it. I'm in the middle of my 13 days of Halloween series, which I'm going to be reviewing so much more in the future, but I also have 5 reviews up already. I have stuff like The Midnight Club, Terrifier 2, and of course I did the Velocipaster, which I highly recommend you checking out. That video is a lot of fun to make. So thanks everybody for watching this video, and I hope to see you all in my next one.